Let's go back in time long, long ago when we were in seventh or eighth grade, and we were sitting in a sex ed class that we didn't want to be in, and we're feeling super awkward and think, what were we even taught about our cycles as females? I feel like I remember thinking I could get pregnant at any moment in my cycle, that I was scared to death and I didn't understand my body at all, but I didn't even know what I didn't know. And when we think back to that time, I often reflect on now, what could we have learned? What could have motivated me to care enough about my body, to want to know the intricate details that I know about my body? Now, fast forward to what you know now. And maybe you're in a spot where you don't feel like you know your body really any better than you did then, or a lot of things are still a mystery and you still don't understand your fertile signs and how ovulation happens and how you know when it's happening and how to navigate and lean into what your body is telling you about your cycle. This episode then is for you. And even if you think you know about your cycle, I encourage you to keep listening because you may even learn something that you didn't know today. God designed your body for fertility, but when the journey to parenthood feels like a heartbreaking mystery, it's so easy to feel lost. I'm Dr. Trisha, a nurse practitioner and fertility consultant who's been where you are. That's why I created Fertility by Design, where faith meets science to empower you with real solutions, holistic healing, and biblical encouragement. You are not alone. Your fertility is not broken. So let's walk this journey together. So many times I hear on repeat, I wish someone would have told me this sooner. I wish I would have learned about my cycle sooner. I wish I would have known that there were other options besides just birth control to prevent myself from getting pregnant. So many people often also feel that their body is broken when they maybe aren't having these typical fertile signs that we're going to talk about today. But what I want you to know is that it's actually just your body communicating with you that something is off, and not to lose hope, but to know that there is so much hope in healing that when we can gently push things back into alignment. The biggest problem is that our body is communicating, but we don't know the language and we don't know what it's trying to say to us. So my hope is that today you will have a really awesome understanding of that. Our fertile signs are really important to understand because it can often be confused as other things if we don't know what our body is trying to tell us. For instance, I have heard of women being diagnosed with repeated bacterial vaginosis, when in reality, it was just normal fertile cervical fluid, but providers weren't really checking, going off of just symptoms of fluid, of discharge, and they weren't actually assessing the patient. And it turns out it was actually really good cervical fluid, not actually BV, but the patient didn't know what good cervical fluid looked like. So there was a lot of miscommunication. I've had clients utilize their fertile signs to actually lean in and heal their bodies once they understood. I've had clients discover that they've had short luteal phases through consistent basal body temperature tracking, and there was no blood work that was catching it. Only her charting caught it. And then we knew how to proceed forward and to heal. One of the biggest things that I love the most to hear from clients is when their natural sex drive returns and it falls in line with their ovulation timing, and they're like really actually feeling the way that they're supposed to have felt this whole time, but they've never really felt it before because their fertility signs were not able to communicate adequately because things were off in the body. But as we shifted things in the right direction, now they're feeling that natural, normal drive to be with their husband around ovulation time. And that is one of my favorite things because it's just something that kind of catches them a little bit off guard. And so I love that. So really, when we are trying to track our fertile signs, our cervical fluid, our basal body temperature, our sex drive, these are often misunderstood in traditional medicine, and they're really dismissed and overlooked, unfortunately. Fertility awareness is often only framed as birth control and not as a window into our fertility health and our overall wellness and hormone balance to track. These signs are free, God-given tools, and most women have just never been taught how to read them. So let's dive in. We are going to start with cervical fluid. Cervical fluid is like the fertility superhighway. It is so necessary to conceive because the vaginal environment really is acidic and it's not hospitable to the sperm. And so what needs to happen is that cervical fluid is that more alkaline environment for the sperm to survive in the vaginal acidic environment. So it helps the sperm survive to be able to reach the egg. It also helps transport the sperm to the egg. It also filters out abnormal sperm. How amazing is that? Like, God has made our bodies so amazing. And it also can keep the sperm and nourish them for up to 5 days. So that is why even if you have intercourse on a few days before ovulation, you can still get pregnant because that cervical fluid allows for the sperm to survive up to 5 days. This cervical fluid should show up days before ovulation. Sometimes there's a pattern where it starts out creamy or sticky, creamy, and then we see what we call egg white cervical fluid, which is the good stuff. So that's going to be literally look just like egg whites if you were to pull out egg whites from the yolk. And sometimes it's a little bit more watery, but we should see that at least a few days before ovulation and leading up to ovulation. And that's a good sign of our fertile health. If we don't have it, there could be a few things happening. We could have hormonal issues. We could just simply be dehydrated and need to drink more water and electrolytes, especially during these summer hot seasons. Staying hydrated is super important. So it gives us a way to guide, are we having this good cervical fluid? Do we have what we need for the sperm to be transported to the egg? Is there something more going on under the surface? Research shows that couples who track a cervical fluid improves conception rates, and cervical fluid is one of the strongest predictors of our fertility window happening. So let's talk about now the next sign. The next sign of our fertility is often an ignored signal and not really acknowledged, but this is our sex drive. So typically what will happen is our estrogen will rise, and as estrogen and testosterone rise and peak around ovulation, we should see an increase in sex drive. This healthy libido is not just like a nice to have thing. It's actually a sign that your body is in sync with your hormones and the timing of ovulation and what God has made our body to desire closer to ovulation due to our drive for procreation. So it's not just a nice to have thing. It's really our body telling us it is in sync with what it is supposed to be doing. Modern life, stress, hormone imbalances, all are going to mute and dampen that signal. But it is really important for us to not negate this fertile sign because it is such a sign of our underlying fertility health. And if we are not having that natural increase in our libido during that time, it is a sign that there may be more going on under the surface. So listen to what your body is telling you. We can predict ovulation with these other signs, our increase in sex drive, our increase in cervical fluid. But how do we confirm that we actually ovulated? Basal body temperature tracking is the best way to confirm if ovulation has happened. We will see a sustained temperature shift when this happens, and that's going to help identify if we did indeed ovulate, what our luteal phase length looks like. Is our progesterone levels staying high enough throughout the luteal phase to support implantation? The way that basal body temperature works quickly is that when our body releases an egg, the follicle that it was in collapses and becomes what's called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes progesterone in the luteal phase. Progesterone is then utilized to thicken our lining, do that last layer of thickening in order for the embryo to implant and sustain the pregnancy. The corpus luteum either dies at roughly 12 to 16 days after if we are not pregnant and implantation did not happen, or it sustains the pregnancy until around 9-10 weeks when the placenta takes over progesterone production. So that's the quick science of it. What happens is progesterone then indirectly will raise body temperature. And that's why we can use our basal body temperature, so our rising temperature, first thing in the morning before our feet hit the ground, before our eyeballs even really fully pop open for the day, before we drink water or do anything. We take our temperature, that's our basal body temperature. We can use that body temperature to indirectly predict if we've had a rise in progesterone, because progesterone raises our temperature. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense to you why we track our temperatures and what information it gives us. So we can see if we're regularly tracking our temperatures, that rise, that confirmation of ovulation, which typically takes 3 days of risen temps to confirm ovulation. That temperature will stay high throughout the rest of the luteal phase until you get your period, or right before you get your period, it will drop off. That's a sign that corpus luteum is dying. There is no more progesterone production, which then triggers you to shed the lining, and that is your period. So crazy, right? Science, love it. The way the Lord has made us is amazing. So when we're using this for data, we can see, is the luteal phase too short and the lining is not getting enough time to thicken? Are we ovulating at all? Are we not having a rise in temps? Are our temps all over the place? Especially with PCOS, a lot of women will do LH strip testing and they'll say, well, I've had multiple surges, but I'm not sure if I'm ovulating or not. The cycle has been going on and on and on and on. When we use basal body temperature checking in conjunction with LH strip testing, it gives us so much more data and it empowers you so much more, because then you're not just wondering, am I ever going to get my period? Or maybe you've experienced where stress or sickness, things like that have delayed your period and you're wondering, oh my gosh, am I pregnant? You take a pregnancy test, it's negative, so you think like something is completely off. But when you're tracking your basal body temperature, you can know and be reassured, okay, I didn't ovulate until day 18 instead of day 16. So I know that my luteal phase is typically 16 days. So I know I have 16 days until I get my period. It empowers you so much and takes away that panic because of the information that it really provides us. And the thing with checking your basal body temperatures as well is that luteal phase typically stays the same and it doesn't change unless there's issues with it and we're improving it. And of course, as we deal with the underlying root issues, we can see it improve. But typically, if you have a 12-day luteal phase, it's going to always be plus or minus 1 day, 12 days. And that is really reassuring because once we ovulate, we can pretty much predict exactly when we will get our period. So hopefully that all made sense. That was a lot of information. If you guys have questions, that is what I'm here for. So let me know. But you can see how our basal body temperature tracking can reveal cycle patterns that lab tests really often miss or go unnoticed. It can also be really helpful for identifying any thyroid issues or chronic stress. So I hope this episode has given you a little bit more confidence in your cycle tracking. Hopefully it gives you that little boost that you need to start tracking some of these fertile signs and feel really confident in doing so and knowing more about what your fertile signs are telling you about your overall health. Learning to track these fertile signs really is a form of stewardship for your body and honoring the design that God wove intricately into your biology. So I encourage you to reflect on how you have felt about your fertility journey and tracking your fertile signs and lean in a little bit deeper and maybe start tracking some of these things, not from a sense of stress and needing it to be perfect, but really from a standpoint of being empowered and starting to learn more about your body and taking the opportunities that God has given us to really learn and know what is going on in our bodies. So I hope this episode has blessed you today. Let me know how you're going to take action on what we've talked about today. I would love to welcome you into our Fertility by Design Facebook community. We are going to be doing more live trainings. I'm going to go even deeper into all of these fertile signs over there. So be sure to join and check it out. I would love for you to sign up for our TTC Tuesday email blast. Those are jam-packed with tons of information, encouragement, education, you name it, and sometimes some special offers as well. And if you are feeling a little lost on your fertility journey, you know that you want help, but you're not sure of what your next steps are, feel free to also book a complimentary call with our team because we would love to connect with you and get you to explore your fertility on a deeper and more faith-aligned fertility path. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited to hang out with you next week here at Fertility by Design. That's it for today's episode of Fertility by Design. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a review to help more couples find hope, and share this with a friend who needs encouragement on their fertility journey. Need even more support? Let's connect. Find me on Instagram at Trisha Zehrung for faith-filled fertility guidance, real solutions, and a community that just understands. Remember, your fertility is not broken. Your body is beautifully and wonderfully designed, and God's plan is always perfect. I'll see you next time.